morrow.
Good morrow.
Yeah. Don't know why I'm doing that. Yeah. Are you all right?
I know why you're doing that. You're doing that because of the book that we were supposed to be doing this week.
That's why I'm scrubbing that from my fucking brain.
Well, we're doing that next week. So
yeah, well, let's see what happens. I can still nobble people before then, you know.
Well, like I say, unfortunately, Violet couldn't make it this week. She has been extremely busy, and unlike us, she wants to come across as professional. So so she didn't have enough time to prep. So that's absolutely fine. You know, we're not here. We're here to make ourselves look foolish, not anybody else. So you know, it's important that the guests feel comfortable when they're coming on. So we all of a sudden we decided we have to read something else. So I half remember the title that you had been reading on a number of the classic ghost stories of Victorian age, or classic mystery tales or whatever. And that name was
Man with the Nose.
The Man with the Nose by
Rhoda Broughton.
Rhoda Broughton, that's it. Not to be confused with The Man with a Nose by H.G. Wells.
Yes.
No, so I think
who could confuse those? Yeah.
They're very close. Very close titles. And I think we might need to read The Man with a Nose at a later date to do a comparison with The Man with the Nose. What was it? With a nose? Yes.
Yeah, The Man with
the Nose.
Yeah, and the reason why I'd mentioned this one is because it's just such a fucking ridiculous title, and I think there's even a line in there where the title's ridiculousness is mentioned. Yeah, so I will let you synopsize.
Shall we do the synopsis? I'm going to actually give you an option. I'm going to give you an option on the synopsis tonight.
Right.
Do you want me to kind of do a synopsis, as in what it's about, or would you like me to do my basic synopsis of it?
I want your basic synopsis of it, please.
Okay. Yeah. So this is The Man with a Nose, where a young, newly married couple do absolutely nothing, and she goes missing.
Yep. Yeah, that's the one I read.
Is that the one you read?
Yeah.
Yeah. The actual synopsis is a newly married couple. They decide to go off to Europe because, hey, why not? They are living, they're leeching off a great uncle of the husband. He is incredibly patronizing to her and her sweet little thing, an child. And basically she says she didn't want to go to the Lake District because she was once mesmerized there by a mesmerizer, which I'm assuming is a hypnotist, who made her do all sorts of things like chicken impressions or whatever they do. And then she was ever so ill afterwards. And then she goes to Europe and has a nightmare about a man with a big nose. And then she sees the man with the big nose, and then the uncle dies, so the husband goes off, and then he comes back and she's not there, and the man with the big nose was seen nearby, and she never comes back. And it was like 20 years ago when it all happened.
Right. Now, in fairness, you're sort of like saying that with this level of incredulity. But to my mind, this is exactly the same as that Shirley fucking Jackson story you had us reading, but just from a different perspective.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all.
They are exactly the same story.
No, they're not.
Happens. Yeah.
No, they're not. To start with, I understand when you say when you start reading something, it's got to grab you and grab your attention. This one does grab your attention.
Yeah, it did beautifully.
Right?
Yeah.
So to start with, that's nothing like the Shirley Jackson story, because this one grabs your attention, right? Secondly, right, you've got to have characters that seem sort of realistic, and the characters in this were nowhere near realistic. These characters,
bullshit.
These characters were almost as formed as Charles Dickens' Single Man. They had just a little bit more than that.
No, he is one of the most well-established, well-crafted characters that we've looked at. He's...
Go on.
Tell me if I'm wrong with any of these descriptions. Is he pure 100% gammon?
Well, he is as British as Bram Stoker's Dracula's guest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's entirely 100% British. Is he a little bit noncy?
Oh, I would say there's a lot of nonsense about it because we're not quite sure how old his wife is.
Yeah, I'm getting the idea that he's going to be able to get her into the cinema at discount prices. I do not think she's, I don't think she can go to the off license for him yet. So, yeah, I think with him, we've got not a particularly nice character, but a very credible character, someone that we can see. I've seen Brexitards like that all the time with, British language, the Anglo-Saxon tongue, that'll carry you around the world. Everybody loves the British. So, yeah, I thought he was 100% realistic that way. I thought the fact that he kept dismissing her opinions was, again, realistic. So, yeah, I thought he was a well-crafted character, even though I didn't like him, and I thought he got what he deserved at the end of it.
Okay, I'm going to go with you and say the way that you have just put that, there was more craft in the character than I was giving it. Because I was just feeling so dismissive of him very, very quickly because of just the way he was talking about his wife. And
he's a twat.
Yeah, it was just, and what was really strange for me is I seriously, even now, before we started doing this, I double checked to make sure that Rhoda was a woman.
Yes, she was a woman. She was the niece of Sheridan Le Fanu, I think. So writing's in her blood.
Yeah. Well.
That's look, me impressed. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, here's the things. Okay. First of all, I'm not going to, like we do with all of it, the actual craft of writing itself, in terms of the usage of words, I thought was good. I thought the beginning bit of it, when they're talking about being on the train and she was kind of looking at the map and they were deciding where to go, like I say, that got me. I was quite intrigued by this. Then I was intrigued by the mesmerizing story. I thought that was nice. And you sit there going, and it starts leading you down a particular path. And then you get to the point, and you're fighting. I was fighting my way through the narrator at this point, because it was like she is saying some interesting things and the narrator is being incredibly dismissive. But then it got to the point of the nightmare, and that's when it didn't feel well written. Up until that point, I thought it felt well written. And then when the nightmare came along, and everything from that point on didn't feel well written to me at all. It felt, I like the term phoned in. It was almost like she had an idea and then just decided to not go with that idea and never found another one.
Yeah, I think my issues with the story were that it was kind of disjointed. On the second or third time going through it, when she's there saying, if we're going somewhere different, I'll need to get myself a translation book. And he's saying, no, you don't. It was, the fuck is the point of this dialogue? This is just padding. There is no need for this whatsoever. We've already established the relationship between this couple. We have already established that they're about to become newlyweds. We've got all of this set up. You're just throwing in words now because you're probably getting paid by the word. That was. Yeah. It was. That was.
Sorry, I do apologize. I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say that was slightly distracting because, for the mystery part of it, for the fact that Rhoda has actually allowed the readers to decide what happened within this story and make up their own minds about what went on. Those parts are really quite intelligent and put a lot of trust in the reader. And then for her to have squandered words by, all this shit of, don't do this, darling, and British language is the best in the world. That's got fuck all to do with anything.
Yeah, I think the thing is it's the character of the man with the nose is so underdeveloped and so almost of no consequence whatsoever that it seems like that's why it felt so flat to me. Now, maybe, I don't know, maybe Rhoda was going for an idea, actually, we'll go back to the Shirley Jackson story for a second. The way the Shirley Jackson story is actually a story about madness and paranoia, and whether or not she is mad or whether something has actually happened or not is what the story is actually about. That maybe what Rhoda was actually doing was making a statement about male writers, maybe, and the way that male writers treat female protagonists. Or maybe the actual point of it was that the man with the nose was so underdeveloped that she was actually just basically taking the mick out of the form. But it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel ironic in any way. It didn't feel like it was being overly clever. It didn't feel like it was trying to do anything. It's like just bounced between things. Like, I've just description of the man with the nose. Now what do I do with him? She sees him, and then we'll make the assumption that he's kidnapped her. Or did she con him? It didn't. It wasn't clever enough to be a red herring. If you know what I mean in that one, there was no. It didn't feel ambiguous. It just felt nothing. It
was a single entendre rather than a double.
Yeah, and I think that's doubling up on it. I think it was a half an entendre.
We can go with that. Am I able to share my screen? Or
you should be able to. Yeah, you should be able to.
Share screen. So, the host is disabled. Host disabled participant. Yeah.
Hang on. I should be able to do something like that. Try that one.
Right. Let's see. So, one of the things that they do whilst they're in that story is they go to see the works of Antoine Wirtz.
Yes, I thought.
Did you have a look at any of these?
I haven't had a chance yet, but thank you for bringing these up, because that to me was the most interesting part of the story.
So this one is an image that's called Suicide, which self-explanatory really as to why it's called Suicide, I suppose. This one is called Madness and Crimes. And again, these are all by Wirtz. And you can sort of like see it's going for sort of like photorealism, but with
grotesque surrealism.
Yeah, I mean, I only saved that one because there's a boob on it, and I like those.
And the baby's leg. I like the baby's leg in the pot's quite a nice touch.
It's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. This is one that's called Satan.
Okay.
Which, that's a very gay Satan, I think.
And I think that was definitely edited after the fact.
I think, chances are the guy's hung like a donkey, but we've sort of like decided to put a rag over him. And the image that they're looking at, the premature burial during the cholera epidemic, is that one there, where if I zoom in a little bit,
let's say Mort de. Thought it said Mort de Chorley then.
I think it's Mort de Cholera or Cholera, or
as in dead by cholera.
Yes, but looking at that, I think the artwork on that is absolutely incredible. I mean, the grain on the wood is beautiful.
Yeah,
the horror in the fella's face. It's a quality piece of artwork, really.
Do you think maybe she's seen this exhibition and tried to just do something with it? Because I mean, you're right. That is brilliant, and that face, the face of fear going on there, and the hands, the work in the hands is magnificent,
isn't it? Just
So maybe Rhoda had been to see an exhibition of this man's work and just thought, I need to write that into a story.
Yes, I think that's a strong possibility. The only thing that would worry me about that is that the museum's in Brussels, and who the fuck would go to Brussels for any reason whatsoever? It's
a different time back then. It was a different time. Maybe Brussels, Brussels, that's where they got the peeing child, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I suppose, yeah. So we're going back to him being nonce again, yeah?
Well, there's written by a woman for some reason, who likes to dress it, she writes a character who likes to dress his wife up in, pretty little bows to make her look like a young child, a little bit like the Crankies, I suppose.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Lolita, but no, you went straight in with the Crankies there, which,
lowbrow, highbrow. There you go. That's your lowbrow, highbrow versions.
But yeah, that's one of the things that does keep creeping up throughout the story. And I think this is a central part of this whole story. The fact that we've got, he's meant to be a man of the world. She's meant to be innocent, naive, and unworldly. We've got this whole notion that the mesmerist did something to her other than mesmerize. Whether he took her up the wrong one, whether he taught her the ping pong ball trick, whatever it is that's actually happened to her, it's obviously something that's left a deep scar and not in the fun way. So she's sort of like there trying to overcome this. And I think sexuality is one of the key things within this story that's sort of like there as a subtext. We've got this couple who have just gotten married, they're spending their first nights together, and there's no suggestion of intimacy or erotica whatsoever in there. And I'm not expecting sort of like a graphic description of her getting boned or anything like that, but there's no suggestion whatsoever.
No, there's a very interesting description when they go on the boat ride, and that's not a euphemism, and he actually describes another couple that's obviously just been married as well as being a competing couple. And I thought that was a really choice description. Again, it was at one of the moments where I was enjoying it. It was kind of like, oh, I like this idea, competing couple.
2 seconds.
Before you had that phone call there, Ash, and I know it was an important call. I know, it was from the bank and they wanted your password. I know, all that kind of stuff. But,
hey, that Nigerian prince is not going to be able to.
I still love the idea that there is actually a Nigerian prince going, but nobody wants my money. It's like there was loads of money that you can't spend. Before that, we were talking about the idea on the scene on the boat when it was a competitive couple, and it was the description of it being competitive, and it was the description that they were being intimate, and the competitive couple were being intimate, and that she was like, "We're not like that, are we?"
Yeah, they do seem to have those standards, don't they? Because it's one of the things where. In chapter 1, because it's divided into, I think, 4 or 5 chapters. In chapter 1, she's saying, "Oh, I hope you don't feel as though you're going to look foolish because, you're going to look like a newlywed." And then afterwards, in chapter 2, he's sort of like saying, "Well, we've got through the unpleasantness of the actual ceremony." And makes it sound like it's an ordeal and tells us that it's worse for men than it is for women, because at least women have got some flowers to hold on to, which I don't know what the fuck that meant. I was.
There's lots of little bits like that kind of go. Like I say, sometimes it works really nicely, and sometimes, like I say, that whole opening to chapter 2, it was awful. It was just really awful to read. And like I say, if that was the point, if the point was that Rhoda was writing about some bloke she knew that treated her like this, then fair enough. It's a very successful thing, because I would quite happily see that. I think that's one of the reasons I was frustrated at the end of it, because he's waiting for his uncle that's not even blood to die. Describes it as the will being quite favourable.
Yes.
Right. And that's when he sort of comes back after 12 weeks, to the shock horror that she disappeared.
12 days, not 12 weeks.
12 days, not even 12 weeks. It's 12 days.
But he does go rushing back to her side after 12 days,
And being annoyed as well when he gets there. Being annoyed. He thinks this is the confidence trick. But she's got nothing. That's the thing. He sits there going, his hands were forming fists because he was so angry at her, because this was the confidence trick that she's now left. she'd been saying don't leave. She's been complaining about seeing a nondescript guy with a big nose and a single eyebrow. Honestly, I thought at one point it was Ernie from Sesame Street she was describing, right? The monobrow with a big nose. And then, you know, who could speak German but not with a German accent. It was one of those, I think, you know, the frustration that we had with the single man.
Yeah.
The signal man, not the single man, the signal man. I think that's where I got with this. I'm so frustrated by being offered so many things and none of them delivering.
Yeah, I can completely take that on board. As I was reading it, I was thinking it had got echoes of the Yellow Wallpaper, but we were seeing a little bit more of it. You know, have you read the Yellow Wallpaper, Charlotte Perkins Gilman?
No.
Right, basic story. I remember I got into trouble for describing it this way whilst I was having my viva for my PhD thesis. But we've got a woman there who's mental as biscuits, starts thinking there's something living in the wallpaper, and it's a story of repression of the female by the male, because her husband sort of like has confined her to the room. And I'm using the word confined rather than locked her away because I think that's a more elegant way of doing it. And yeah, I know this sounds like I'm defending Joseph Fritzl, but the guy knew how to build a basement. I mean, and he knew how to sort of like do all of that DIY stuff. So yeah, we were getting echoes of Charlotte Perkins Gilman in there, which I was quite impressed with. And I did think it was indicative of its time, that we were sort of like seeing how these relationships are between a couple during Victorian, in the Victorian period. Things that we look at ordinarily nowadays that are of that time are usually the ones that show a slightly different relationship. So you read something like The Importance of Being Earnest, and it's the women in it are the controlling characters. They're the ones that sort of like say, these are the rules and this is how things work. But this is actually a rare glimpse into, do you know what? It was a patriarchal hegemony. It was blokes that were in charge. And this is the shitty way things go when blokes are in charge.
Yeah, I get your point, and I do see where you're coming from on there. But I actually think that the Old Nurse's story actually did that better. Even though we both complained about the ultra realism that was happening at the beginning of that story, which meant it was feeling a little bit dull, I thought the way that it actually put across the concept of the patriarchal system, and particularly in the gentrified families, more than anywhere else, I thought it just did it better. And in this one, I think it was too many different stabs. Or it could be too ultra realistic in that respect, in the way that I don't like Mole Flanders for that same reason of, trying to create a character that you're reading that you don't like the character that you're reading. But there's no peril for him at all. It's like there's no lead up. There's no this is what's going to happen. There's no real tension to build up. He just turns up and she's gone, and then it's 20 years later as he's describing it. She's had a nightmare about some guy that she then says that she's seen. That's it. There's no other build-ups to it. There's no payoff for the mesmerizer in terms of it being the same guy there. And he just tries to find out who it is. And it was all those, there's no luck here. Oh, I'll go and ask her. She didn't know either. And I went over here and they didn't know. And it was just like, it was almost like what you said about the Shirley Jackson one, in terms of he's got to grab you when you first start reading it, and therefore it kind of fails in a short story in that way, that it doesn't grab its reader, but it succeeds in a short story because by the end of it you feel invested. I think this one is the other way around. I think at the beginning of this one you feel invested and you start not liking them, but by the end of it you've not been brought along for the journey. There's no I personally didn't feel like I actually went on a journey with these characters. It didn't. So when the actual thing happens and she's not there, and you're just left with the circumstantial evidence, And you're basically placed in this idea of somebody who's gone missing, and you've no idea why they've gone missing, and no idea where they've gone. And you just know that there's this character that she described that may have also been there. That's, you know, that seems a bit suspicious that she's not there anymore. And the help didn't even know she'd gone. There are no signs of a struggle, but we know it's happened on that particular day. That's it. And it's like, okay, that might be incredibly realistic in how people go missing when you have missing persons. It might be exactly how that actually plays out, but that doesn't make for great entertainment.
No, Hitchcock said that fiction should be real life with the boring bits left out. And yeah, it doesn't even have the enough boring bits put in to make it cohesive. Yeah, I think one of the things that I didn't like was the fact that the mesmerist is mentioned, and there's all this intrigue about, oh, what has he done? So, like, did he get a finger in there? What went on that sort of like left her feeling upset? And what the fuck has it got to do with the rest of the story? Because there's no explicit relationship mentioned between the mesmerist and the man with the nose and the monobrow. We think it's the man with the nose who appears. I mean, did you get the impression that she'd had a nightmare, or that he was actually in the bedroom?
Well, I think it started off thinking he was actually in the bedroom, and I quite liked the idea of being in the bedroom. But then she said that the husband had seen him, and that made it obviously a nightmare, because he's being the narrator. So either he is lying through his teeth at that point to us and was awake, or he actually wasn't awake, because that's what he's told us. And she was obviously asleep, because in the way she described it, he was awake and saw the man, and he was adamant he hadn't. So at that point there, it's kind of like that can only lead to it either being a nightmare or the narrator is lying to us.
I'm tempted to go with the latter option of those two, the fact that he's a liar, because when she sort of like sees him aboard the ship, and faints, sort of like saying, oh, I've just seen him, and then says, go after him, pursue him. The whole notion of, oh, I'll go after him tomorrow morning. Why, you fucking retard? Why wait till tomorrow morning? Why not go now? Because if he'd got at that point, he would have solved everything, wouldn't he? He would have sort of like been able to collar him, say, you got a fucking monobrow, you and a dodgy nose, but let's chuck you overboard, or, yeah.
But what I mean is he's the narrator, though. So it's kind of like that's why it doesn't hang true for me in terms of the entertainment value. He's either a liar, in which case, which he does was the man in the room or not in the room, right? So in which case, why is he doing that? Is he trying to drive her mad? In which case, she should have been the mum with the money, not him. In which case, he's then trying to drive her mad. But then he'll actually say the most ridiculous things like, oh, I'll go after him tomorrow, to us, the reader. And that doesn't make any sense either, because we're not her, because he's recounting what she says. And then at the end of it, that was 20 years ago, you know, so he's telling us 20 years on from when all this happened, and then includes something that makes him look stupid. That doesn't quite work either. And so that's what I mean is it doesn't, to me, it's a little bit like Alanis Morissette's Ironic, in that somebody once said, what makes it really ironic is that there's nothing in it that's ironic. And you go, well, it doesn't quite work because there's one instance of irony, but it's not one of the examples that she uses for irony. So therefore it doesn't work. And that's what I mean is, you can go with a lot of really clever ideas around this story. There's a lot there that could work really, really nicely as various different. That's what I mean. It's like loads of little threads that come out and go, that's a nice idea. Okay, he's a liar in what he's telling us, and what he's actually telling us is completely, the unreliable narrator, absolute bullshit that he's giving us, so that we think that the wife's run away. But then we should be left with a sense that, oh, did he murder her? Or did he do this? But there's no sense of why he even would. There's no motivation in there, hidden, seemingly in there. And that's why it keeps falling down for me, is the more I think about it, the less impressive it becomes along those lines, because it just keeps leaving dead ends. Well, not even dead ends, they're just flailing around, these sort of plot lines, flailing around without a home. And it, like I say, it must be clever this way, but then it can be easily disproved because he's the narrator. If it was third person, you'd get away with it a lot more, you know.
Yeah, I know you're right. I mean, no, I enjoyed this one. I found it entertaining, and I don't know whether that was because I was taking a step away from that fucking Toronto shite, and that honestly, reading the phone book would have been sort of like, oh well, this is interesting compared to what I've just been looking at.
Look, Violet likes it. I know.
Again, I know. I'm getting this out of my system. This is like
get out your system now. I have very interesting ideas about that. In terms, I honestly, I totally get where you're coming from. However, there is a little thing about, and I don't want to discuss it just yet because I think it'll be a very interesting conversation when we actually finally have that with Violet. But I agree with you in that it's, okay, like it's a prototype, but.
Yes, but it's no, I thought Man with the Nose, I thought it was readable. I thought there were lots of exciting things in there, but I think you're right as well with the fact that it lacked cohesion. It was missing direction. It just sort of like was going from one creepy idea to another creepy idea to another creepy idea, and they weren't being joined to make a whole. And I think,
I'll go with what you're saying there. Actually, is the creepy ideas. If you take the creepy ideas separately, and this is, I want to read more Rhoda Broughton after this, because there is absolutely no doubt the skill that she has in the creepiness. You know, it's because and I think that's where part of it is, you know, sometimes you just get annoyed at something because it's, you know, it's not giving you what you want. Because the mesmerist, the fact she called him a mesmerist to start with, I was swooned at that point. And to me, that was just so much of the story. It kind of dripped of the 39 steps in a way, and it had so much intrigue and mystery that could then fall off the back of it. It just didn't do it. But the way she described it, and the way she described the fever afterwards and being ill and seeing I can't remember what it was now, exactly what it was, but it was kind of, it's almost like this foliage that was put around the top of the bed, because he jokes and went, oh, we just won't go to that place then. Where was it? Ulverston, wasn't it? In Ulverston. And it was great, and I was really buying into it at that point, because I loved that whole train journey. And like I say, he was being an English prat. She was just being dead excited because she's just got married and she's now got the opportunity to stamp at things on a map, and that was great, and I loved that. And then chapter 2 happened. It was at that point it was like, what the hell is this? At that point, you know, and then it comes back again, and then it goes, what the hell is this? And you know, that's where I
So I agree with what you said before, but we need to read more of this lady's work because absolutely, she's somebody who I've not encountered before. This isn't one of her most famous stories, I think,
but it's on the list.
Yes, but I think it's on the list because it's such a stupid fucking title. Because the Man with the Nose, and they go, oh, fuck, that sounds great. The Man with the Nose, yeah.
It's a bizarre title, but H.G. Wells, The Man with a Nose.
Yeah,
we've got to find out what that is about, because it does seem like a really odd title. But again, putting it in the Times. I mean, this was originally published in one of the periodicals again, wasn't it? This wasn't an anthology thing. It was actually, you know, a newsstand story.
It was in the Temple Bar or something like that. We've got the name of the
I mean, she's, you know, she heralds from Wales, so female Welsh author from the Victorian period. I definitely need to read more of her stuff. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like I say, I think part of it is my own personal frustrations with it, as opposed to it being. I'll go back and give it another go because I did the usual. I read it and then listened to it, and I was a little bit. What is like? What I say? I mean, it's not as bad as the Signal Man. The Signal Man was just.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just so frustrating, especially as such a brilliant writer. But yeah, it was just the inconsistencies with it. At least, say, with the Shirley Jackson one, I understand exactly what you mean about it being a dirge. This wasn't a dirge in that respect, right? But the Shirley Jackson one actually did what it intended to do, which was to be a dirge and a snapshot of someone's life. This one,
that was a dirge with a purpose.
Yeah.
That was a dirge with a purpose. This is a purpose. Sorry, well, this is not a dirge, but it's not a purpose.
It's got no purpose. Yeah, that's it. It's nice, exciting, well-written stuff that seems to have absolutely no idea what it is, or it knows what it is so much that we as the reader don't.
Yeah, I think she's sort of like forgotten to put some clues in there for simple-minded folks like us as we try and wade our way through it.
I think that might be.
Yeah. As you said, I want to read more of her stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but from a creative point of view, some really nice ideas in there. The mesmerized, really nice idea. The idea of this stranger. There was a bit of kind of Sherlock Holmesy feel about the way, like you say, the nightmare sequence. I'd have loved it to have actually been in the room. I really, really would love that. I loved the idea of her waking him up and him then saying it must have been a nightmare. And if she hadn't done but you were saying this and really left it open as ambiguous, that would have been nice and would have been really sort of like mystery and 1930s black and white movie type thing. Yeah, that would have been good. But it just
weird relationship between the couple. Him sort of like calling her my little one and my precious sweet child. Oh God, it's Jimmy Savile-tastic. Yeah,
it was very creepy. Now again, is that because of its time? Maybe she wasn't as young as 12, which is the impression I got. Because you wouldn't leave a 12-year-old on their own in Europe. But maybe he's young.
That's the McCanns.
No, I won't go there. But maybe not that young, but they were young back then, weren't they? Because when they used to get married in the Victorian times, and I can't remember. I don't know when it was actually made older. I know back in the 60s you had to be 21 before you could agree to marry someone without parents' permission.
Wow.
But parents' permissions a parent could actually give permission to a 16-year-old to get married. This is why people used to run off to Gretna Green, because in Scotland they didn't have that rule.
Right. So historically, in 1275, the first age of consent was set in England at age 12. That was Statute of Westminster number 1. And then in 1875, the Offences Against the Person Act raised the age to 13 in Great Britain and Ireland. And 10 years later, the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885 raised it to 16. So the time when this story was written, I think it was published in 1854, we have an age of consent at 12, which is not creepy at all. Well, actually, no, it's incredibly fucking creepy.
But there's also, don't forget, there's a caveat with that as well, because that's age of consent is when the individual can consent. The caveat that went with it when it went to 16, and I know it was at one point when it was 18, was that can be lowered with parental consent.
Okay, I've been a little bit sick at the back of my mouth there. That's
and that wasn't that long ago, actually. I remember in the 80s there was a thing of that, because when the age of consent back then was all to do with marriage as well, so you could consent to marriage. But I know back in the 80s that because I did a Duke of Edinburgh award, and part of my Duke of Edinburgh award was law, and we were actually being told that basically, the age of consent is 16 in this country for women. But it's actually in the 80s. It might be different now, but in the 80s it was 14 with parental consent.
Wow.
Which is why not everybody got done for statutory rape if they were in a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old. If the parents were in full knowledge of it and stated that their daughter was able to make that decision, then it was actually considered to be okay.
You're saying the Duke of Edinburgh approved of all these things?
I don't know. I didn't read the letter. He sent a whole memo of stuff that we were allowed to do. Now, I used to have to go to the police station once a week, not for the usual, for the to go and learn about law, basically. And I learned a lot of very interesting facts and figures and statistics and stuff like that, which was really, really interesting. And
I've got a Duke of Edinburgh award as well.
I got a Duke of Edinburgh bronze, yeah.
Wow.
I don't talk about it very often. But yeah.
You sure? If I got one of those, is it a badge? Can you wear it?
I don't know. See, the trouble is, I lost it all in the move when I moved to Blackpool, because I did it when I was in Brighton. But I actually have no record of it at all. So, I did it as part of the Army Cadets.
And you can't ask him for it because I think he died recently.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never even thought of doing that. It's one of those kind of, to me, it was like the Bronze Award is what everybody did. If you were in the Cubs or you were in the Army Cadets or the Air Cadets, the silver and gold, they were the special ones. They were the ones that took dedication.
No, never went in for anything like that.
Yeah.
Never encouraged to. No, it was just sort of like a case of, no, you're not bright enough for that, actually. So, yeah, I'd just sit there eating my Lego in the corner and, proving them right. Yeah,
well, it was interesting. It was interesting stuff. That's,
We have just slipped off topic, haven't we? So far,
kind of. Oh, he said, getting cramp in his leg. Kind of, because it's kind of it is interesting because it is that taking things back to its time and stuff that we now find creepy. So when back in its time when this was published, it's to the readers back then it might not have been so creepy because it was much more of a normal thing. But however, in saying that, it obviously wasn't considered to be just normal because it constantly changed in the law. I mean, it was around about this time, wasn't it? So it was 12 when this was published, but not long after this was published, it was raised to 13.
Yep, and then to 16.
And then to 16. So, it's obviously the age of consent, and particularly with the age of marriage. I mean, there are still states in America where the age of consent for sexual contact is 21, however, unless you're married, and you can actually have an age of consent of marriage of 12. And that's in America.
But surely there's no point in an age of consent once they are married because that's when sex stops, isn't it?
Well, that's the British way of doing it. But again, it's like that conjugal rights thing, isn't it? That was something that was still on the statute books during the 70s, during the 80s. That a man, once you were married, a man could not rape his wife at that point because of conjugal rights. That's now changed. The law's changed on that one, thankfully, because it was absolutely hideous that existed in the first place.
Bizarre laws. So next week we're looking at Castle of Otranto.
Unfortunately, yes. Oh, sorry. No, we are. Because we have our guest Violet, who also knows a huge amount about this kind of a subject as well, because she's a historian and a very good one at that.
A brilliant one. And yes, so right, that means that I've got to finish the book and I won't be cheating by reading York notes or anything like that, or looking at any literature pages or asking a colleague at work.
Ash, you've read Shakespeare.
Yeah. And they've got sort of like stories in them that carry on. And this one, it just keeps... We'll save that for next week.
Save that for next week because, it's going to be a very interesting conversation, I think. So let's just recap on this one for now because, like I say, it's very interesting conversation. I think I've changed my mind about this a certain degree, and that I think that there was a lot more in it than I was giving it credit for, because I was finding it annoying in what it was doing.
But I think you're absolutely right. I think she drops the ball repeatedly and then picks it up and looks like she's running in a fun direction with it. And then, there's a lot of ball dropping in there. Yeah.
Yeah. But when she has the ball, it is actually really good and really entertaining, and has some really nice creative ideas that are going on. And I think I'm beginning to think, in terms of inspiration for this, I'm wondering how much of it is relating to her own life or someone that she knew in that respect. Did you look up any of her inspirations or what other people have said?
I didn't. Well, I tried to, but there's so little about about this story that we've got into it kind of nicely ignorant. But I think my one takeaway
from this story now.
A takeaway from this has been that I love these paintings by Wirtz.
Yes.
They are just, these are just something that I wouldn't have expected to encounter. And as you say, that leg in the pot there is just,
I think in terms of her inspirations, I really do think that these particular pieces of artwork were a major point of that. I think she's been to see an exhibition of this chap's work, of which I'll be investigating him a lot more as well, to be perfectly honest with you, because that work is exquisite. And I think that she's trying to write something off the back of it, or she's observed a couple, because what was very interesting in when they go to because we haven't really spoken about how they go to that, actually. When they go to the exhibition, how he is the one that's disturbed by it and she isn't.
Yes.
To her, it's just all a bit of a whimsy.
Yeah, and he's like, a bit freaked out by it.
Yeah.
Which, but no, I like it. I'm looking forward to more Rhoda in the future. Yes.
We will definitely find some more of her stuff, because I think it's one of those ones that we need to. I think she definitely needs to be seen a lot more. So we'll find more of hers, without a doubt.
So and please hit the like button wherever the hell the like button is. Ring the bell if that's not a euphemism for something dirty. And please tell friends if you've enjoyed it. If you've not enjoyed it, tell people you don't like. Make them sit through this shit for an hour. That'll show them. That'll learn them.
I've been thinking that, share it with people you don't like, as doing that one of the, it's safe for the office, that kind of thing. And then make them say, you got to watch it to the end, because a really good thing happens at the end. Never does.
Yeah. Perfect. Yes.
Brilliant, dude.
Fantastic. And big round of applause for the new glasses. They look really cool.
Yeah. It's quite happy with. They don't reflect as much, have you noticed, as well? They're very focal now. So, right. So yes. Anyway, so finish the book without using York notes.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely will. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course. If you're having trouble sleeping, just put it on as an audiobook. I'm
at the exciting part now.
Where is the exciting part? I tell a lie. There is an exciting part. I quite enjoy the end, but the middle is
right. I look forward to the end.
Yeah. Seriously, honestly, I'm all for anything that starts off with someone being killed by a giant helmet. I think is always a good start.
Yeah, I've seen that movie as well. Yes.
See, listener, you're intrigued now, aren't you? What's the name of the title? I can never remember the title. The Castle of
Otranto.
Who?
Otranto.
Otranto. The Castle of Otranto. I knew that. I knew that. Just testing.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be fun. I'm sure it's going to be fun.
Cheers, guys.
Hello, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.